In the Mood for Love, a perfect representation of how every aspect of the filmmaking process can be used to create meaning and feeling almost simultaneously. It rarely gives into the conventional practices like traditional coverage per se, and yet makes a seemingly mediocre and common story feel unique and riveting. As of now, it is one of my favorite Asian movies, and one of my favorite movies in general, Asian or not, of all time. I can list off a multitude of reasons as to why this is, and there is so much a young filmmaker like myself can learn from its craftsmanship. But to focus on one, I thought it appropriate to examine the concept of intimacy, and more importantly, how the director Wong Kar-wai illustrates intimacy through a carefully placed camera in such a restrained yet calculated way. Director Wong Kar-wai and cinematographers Christopher Doyle and Mark Lee Ping Bing decided to take the camera, put it on a tripod, and leave it alone. The mastery of this placement allows for the actors to perform and move fluidly throughout a scene without having to cut. The blocking means something in this film, and the stationary camera allows us to explore that. But this placement doesn't just rely on the actors to tell the whole story themselves. It plays with framing, placing people, objects, or walls in places that adds another layer of storytelling in and of itself. To get more detailed, let's look at a few examples. Example 1. Confined spaces. For much of the film, the characters are moving through narrow hallways or trapped in cramped rooms where there is little room for anyone or anything else than the two people that are in front of us. Watch this scene and see what I mean. Notice the camera doesn't move. They are trapped in this small room, and therefore the scene is intimate by default. This confined space doesn't allow nor need any crazy coverage to tell its story. As the scene plays out, our eyes begin to follow their words as opposed to the camera. The same happens in this hallway. Two main characters must move past each other and stand close together and present awkward body language. This makes it feel uncomfortable and, as a result, intimate. While this may seem like a lack of skill on the part of the cinematography and editing, I actually think it takes more skill to show restraint than to get carried away. The same thing happens in most other parts of the film, but what often contributes to that cramped and claustrophobic vibe is the use of putting a frame within a frame. Take a look at this part of a scene here. Our character, Mr. Chow, is seen through a window. The person he's talking to is concealed by a bookshelf. We obviously know exactly who to focus on. In fact, the scene makes it feel as if we are spying on our protagonist. He's cramped in the frame, within the frame, but that frame makes the overall frame feel smaller. That was confusing, but it demonstrates my overall point. The camera never moves in this scene, but the combination of actors staging, framing, and the restrained camera movement allows for multiple levels of storytelling to come through the composition. This is obviously a very well thought out and careful shot, and it's executed to perfection. My final example showcasing how the cinematography tells a story that remains intimate is in one of my favorite scenes outside as our two characters act out another hypothetical scenario. The scene uses foreground objects and shadows to express a feeling and an idea of being constricted and trapped. Metal bars lie across the frame, making them look like they're prisoners. Later, Wong Kar-wai decides once again to shoot their conversation through bars. While the camera stays at a distance, allowing us to establish geography and maintain a sense of us spying on them, the bars continue the idea of being trapped and constrained, even as the camera breathes. This is yet another example of how the framing is killing two birds with one stone and adding multiple layers of storytelling into a singular scene. This feeling of constraint plays into the idea of intimacy that is present throughout the rest of the film. No matter where these two characters go, they are somehow forced, whether it be through foreground and background framing, being put into confined spaces, or being placed in a frame within a frame, they're forced into an intimate setting. As one can see, this film doesn't rely on one aspect of the process to tell its story and advance specific thematic goals. It combines them, allowing the lighting, blocking, performances, and more to work together to the best of their abilities. This is a philosophy I wish to adopt in my own films. Rather than focusing on one aspect of the process, maximizing and capitalizing on all the potential that film has to offer, will make for better movies. I don't want to distract my audiences with gimmicks and tricks. I want to tell the best stories in the best way possible. This would be allowed, in my opinion, by the simple decisions not to overshoot. Instead, I would think deeply about my camera placement and use the environment to its fullest advantage. The result, just like In the Mood for Love, would be a close, personal, and complex story that will stay with its audiences for a long time to come.